Okay. On this vote, the yeas are 50, the nays are 50, the Senate being equally divided. The Vice President votes affirmative, and the point of order is sustained. Gotta make sure.
The U.S. Senate has narrowly voted to block an effort to rein in President Donald Trump's authority to use military force in Venezuela, a dramatic showdown that exposed deep fractures within Washington and the Republican Party itself. In a razor-thin 51-50 vote, a bipartisan war powers resolution was effectively derailed after two Republican senators, Josh Hawley and Todd Young, reversed their earlier support under intense pressure from the White House. With the chamber deadlocked, Vice President JD Vance stepped in to cast the tie-breaking vote, shutting down the measure on a procedural motion. The resolution had aimed to force President Trump to seek congressional approval before launching any further military action in Venezuela. It followed a controversial U.S. operation earlier this month that led to the capture of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, an operation authorized without prior notification to key Senate committees.
To the unauthorized military action in Venezuela. This wasn't a law enforcement action. They're lying to the American people when they say that. It was an unprecedented military action. And yes, in fact, it is the case that Maduro is a bad guy, a dictator, someone who was not the legitimate head of government or head of state in Venezuela. We also know that the future of the Venezuelan people should be determined by the Venezuelan people, not by Donald Trump, Pete Hegseth, or Stephen Miller. Are you kidding me? These people don't even know how to run the United States of America. And we're supposed to believe that there's any credibility to the notion that the Trump administration is going to run Venezuela, a country of 30 million people in South America. The American people reject the possibility of another unjustified foreign war that seems to be on the horizon because of Trump's desire to reward big oil in the United States of America, while continuing to not do a damn thing to make life better for the American people.
Just a week earlier, the Senate had voted 52-47 to advance the resolution, dealing what many saw as a rare rebuke to Trump's use of force. But the White House responded swiftly. President Trump publicly lashed out at the 5 Republicans who backed the measure, warning they should never be elected again, and personally called several senators to vent his anger.
The yeas are 52, the nays are 47. The motion is agreed to. The joint resolution will be placed on the calendar.
On Wednesday, Republican leadership deployed a procedural maneuver, stripping the resolution of its privileged status and raising the threshold for passage to 60 votes, effectively sealing its fate in the GOP-controlled Senate. Democrats accused the administration of sidestepping the Constitution. Senator Tim Kaine, who introduced the resolution, called it a line in the sand, arguing that Congress alone has the power to declare war.
It's disappointing that my colleagues let the president sort of beat him into submission. I mean, after they voted last week to basically say, this is an important enough issue to discuss in front of the American public, as the Constitution requires. The White House put a full court press on, unlike any I've seen in 13 years here, to stop a public debate about a war. You know, a full court press to stop a public debate. If they were that righteous about the justness of this cause or the validity of their legal rationale, they wouldn't be afraid of a public debate. But they're afraid of that. 4 months of military action, more than 200 combatants killed, U.S. troops injured, 16,000 troops, and massive military assets arrayed in an armada around Venezuela, and threats for more invasion, threats for more activity, control of Venezuelan politics, control of the Venezuelan economy. They just voted on the floor that that's not hostilities. And JD Vance, who made his chops here in the Senate and even as a vice presidential candidate as the anti-forever war guy, as the focus on the home front guy and don't spend money overseas, comes in to cast the tie-breaking vote for forever wars and end running Congress and doing it in the skiff behind closed doors so you're not honest with the American public about it.
The White House, however, defended the operation as legally justified, framing it as part of a broader campaign against transnational drug cartels designated as terrorist organizations.
Vice President, even beyond the War Powers resolution today, Congress has bucked President Trump on issues like tariffs. Are you concerned that President Trump is losing his grip on Republicans in the Congress, and what are you going to do about it?
No, I'm not concerned at all. First of all, we talked to some of the senators who were going to vote the wrong way, in my view, on this resolution today. Much of their argument was based more on a legal technicality than any disagreement in policy. If you look at the people who actually voted, every single one of them have supported the administration's plan. Second of all, as the president, I believe himself has already said, every president, Democrat or Republican, believes the War Powers Act is fundamentally a fake and unconstitutional law. It's not going to change anything about how we conduct foreign policy over the next couple of weeks, the next couple of months, and that'll continue to be how we approach things. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Vice President. So we are seeing, regarding Iran, we are seeing the protests in Iran these days. The cities are begging for help from the U.S. and Israel, naming streets in the city after President Trump. It seems there is an opportunity here that may not come again. Will the United States stand by the citizens of Iran? And if Israel decides to strike again the nuclear sites in Iran, is the U.S. expected to take part?
Well, look, we certainly stand by anybody who's engaged in peaceful protest, anybody who's trying to exert their rights for free association and to have their voices heard. Obviously, the Iranian regime has a lot of problems. And as the President of the United States has said, the smartest thing for them to have done, it was true 2 months ago, it's true today, is for them to actually have a real negotiation with the United States about what we need to see when it comes to their nuclear program. I'll let the President speak to what we're going to do in the future, but we certainly stand with anybody across the world, including the Iranian people who are advocating for their rights. I'll take just a couple more questions. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Vice President. Concerning Venezuela, how would you assure the Caribbean region that they will remain a zone of peace? Because some member states in the region are concerned.
Well, look, the president had a very productive phone call with the president of Colombia yesterday, and we continue to talk at all levels of government with a number of our friends in the Caribbean region. I actually think this is really good for peace in the Caribbean, because when you take away a major source of illegal cartel revenue, which is the cocaine trade, the fentanyl trade, other sources of illicit revenue, you actually remove the power of one of the main destabilizing forces in Latin America and in the Caribbean. I really do think, look, we say it all the time, this is the president of peace. One of the ways that you establish peace in your own hemisphere is to make it clear that the United States is going to be respected, that the United States is willing to take power away from criminal cartel organizations and give it to legitimate governments. That's how we see the future of the Western Hemisphere, and we think it's going to be much more peaceful than it was certainly under Joe Biden.